How would you feel if your parents hated on you because of your divorce and treated your son like the least favored grandchild? Let me guess. You'd feel hurt and betrayed. That's exactly how I felt when my parent did just that to me. My name is Chantel, and I'm 36 years old. 3 months ago, I was living in my childhood bedroom with my 12-year-old son Dylan, convinced that moving back in with my wealthy parents after my divorce was a temporary good move. Just until I got back on my feet. I was wrong. I had no idea I was about to discover what my family really thought of us. Let me paint you a picture of where this all started. After 18 years of marriage, my ex-husband decided he needed to find himself, apparently in our neighbor's bed. The divorce was ugly, expensive, and left me with barely enough to cover a security deposit, let alone first month's rent on a place big enough for Dylan and me. My parents, Robert and Patricia Williams, live in this gorgeous colonial house in Dublin, Ohio. Dad's a retired insurance executive. Mom was a bank manager before she became a full-time socialite. They've got money, the kind that comes with investment portfolios and country club memberships and heated bathroom floors. When they offered to let Dylan and me stay in the guest wing until I could save up for our own place, I actually cried with relief. I mean, these are the people who raised me to believe that family comes first, that you take care of your own no matter what. Dylan was excited too. He'd always been close with his grandparents, and after watching his dad walk away, he needed that stability. That love. I teach high school English at Dublin Kaufman, and between my salary and some tutoring on weekends, I figured we'd be out of there in 6 months, maybe 8 at the most. I had a plan. I always have a plan. What I didn't plan for was my sister Kelsey getting pregnant. Now, don't get me wrong. I was happy for Kelsey when she announced she was expecting. She's 32, married to this sweet guy named Marcus, and they'd been trying for over a year. The whole family was over the moon. But something changed the moment that baby arrived. Little Emma was born on a Tuesday in September, and by Thursday, my parents had completely transformed the main guest suite. You know, the one with the sitting area and the private bathroom and the walk-in closet, into what Mom called Emma's wing. Kelsey, Marcus, and the baby moved in just for a few weeks to help with night feedings. Dylan and I got moved to the smaller guest room down the hall. The one with the twin beds, and the bathroom we had to share with whoever was visiting. It's temporary, honey, Mom said when she saw my face. Just until Kelsey gets the hang of things. But temporary started feeling permanent when Kelsey's few weeks turned into a month, then 2 months, then 3. And every day, I watched my parents fall deeper in love with their granddaughter while Dylan became background noise. It was little things at first. Dylan would come running downstairs with a drawing he'd made, excited to show Grandma and Grandpa, only to find them cooing over Emma in her bouncy seat. "That's nice, sweetie," Mom would say without even looking. "Put it on the fridge." But there was no room on the fridge anymore. Every inch was covered with Emma's ultrasound photos, her first pictures, her tiny handprints. Dylan's artwork got relegated to the bulletin board in the laundry room. By November, the dynamic had shifted completely. Dinner conversations revolved around Emma's sleep schedule, Emma's feeding times, Emma's developmental milestones. Dylan would try to share something from school, a good grade on a test, a funny story from lunch, and Dad would interrupt with, "Did you see Emma smile today? I swear she was looking right at me." My son stopped trying to join the conversations. He'd just eat his dinner quietly and ask to be excused. The breaking point started building when my parents decided the main floor guest room wasn't enough space for Kelsey's growing collection of baby gear. The pack-and-play, the swing, the high chair, the bouncy seat, the play mat, it was taking over their pristine house, and Mom was getting stressed about entertaining her book club and bridge group. "Chantel," Dad said one evening in December, cornering me in the kitchen while I was grading papers. "We need to talk about the room situation." I looked up from my students' essays on To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh, the irony wasn't lost on me later, and waited. Kelsey needs more space for Emma's things. And honestly, Dylan's getting to an age where he might prefer some privacy anyway. What are you suggesting? The attic. I stared at him. The attic? Dad, it's not even finished up there. We'll get some insulation put in, maybe a space heater. It could be like his own apartment. Boys his age love that kind of independence. Independence. That's what we were calling it. The attic was cold, drafty, and had exposed beams. There was one small window and a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. My 12-year-old son was being moved to what was essentially storage space so that Emma's nursery items could have the heated, carpeted, beautifully furnished guest room. But Dylan, bless his heart, tried to make the best of it. It's kind of cool, Mom, he said, helping me carry his twin mattress up the narrow stairs. Like a treehouse. I bought him a space heater, string lights, and a small area rug with my tutoring money. I made it as cozy as I could, but every night when I tucked him in under two comforters because the heating barely reached up there, my heart broke a little more. That's when I started paying closer attention to conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. It was a Tuesday in January when I came home early from school. I'd left my lesson plan book and needed it for the next day. I could hear voices in Dad's study, the one with the thick oak door that was usually closed when he was handling business matters. But the door was cracked and I heard my name. Need to think about this carefully, Patricia. If something happens to us, Kelsey's got Emma to think about now. She's going to need the resources. I know, but Chantel's our daughter too. And Dylan. Chantel's a teacher. She's got job security, benefits, a pension plan. And Dylan's not our biological grandchild, technically speaking. My blood turned to ice. Dylan's not our biological grandchild, technically speaking. But Robert, your will splits everything 50-50 between the girls. That was before Emma. We need to be practical. Kelsey's got a baby to raise, and Marcus is just getting his consulting business off the ground. Chantel's already established. I pressed closer to the door, my heart hammering. What are you thinking? Mom asked. 80-20 split. Maybe 75-25 if you think that's more fair. The house goes to Kelsey. She'll need the space, the investment accounts, the life insurance payouts. Chantel can have some of the smaller assets, maybe the lake house. The lake house. The tiny two-bedroom cabin that needed a new roof and had been sitting empty for 3 years. My sister was inheriting millions. I was getting the money pit. That night, lying in my childhood bed while my son shivered in the attic above me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to be smart about this. You see, 18 years of marriage to a man who thought he could outsmart me taught me a few things about gathering evidence and protecting myself. My ex-husband had tried to hide assets during our divorce, thinking his sweet little English teacher wife wouldn't know how to trace them. He was wrong. And now my parents were making the same mistake. First, I started paying attention to everything. Every dismissive comment about Dylan, every time they prioritized Emma over their other grandchild, every decision that made it clear where we ranked in their family hierarchy. I started keeping notes. Dates, times, exact quotes. I had a small notebook that I kept in my purse, and every night I'd write down what had happened that day. January 15th, Dylan showed Grandpa his science project, Volcano. Dad said, "That's nice," without looking up from playing peekaboo with Emma. January 18th, Dylan asked if we could watch a movie together as a family. Mom said Emma's bedtime routine was too important to disrupt. January 22nd, Kelsey complained that Dylan's footsteps in the attic were too loud during Emma's naps. Dad asked me to talk to him about being more considerate. But I wasn't just documenting the emotional neglect. I was also quietly securing my financial future. See, my parents didn't know that I'd been tutoring not just on weekends, but 3 evenings a week too. I had 5 regular students whose parents paid me $40 an hour to help their kids with college prep writing. That was $600 a week that nobody in my family knew about. Every single dollar went into a separate savings account that I'd opened at a different bank. An account that my parents, who thought they knew everything about my struggling financial situation, had no idea existed. By February, I had saved nearly $4,000 and documented dozens of instances of favoritism and emotional neglect. But I needed more information about their old changes, and I needed proof. The opportunity came when my parents decided to take a long weekend to visit Dad's sister in Florida. Kelsey and Marcus were going too, a family trip to introduce Emma to her great-aunt. Dylan wasn't invited. Too much travel with a baby, Mom explained. And he'll be more comfortable here, anyway. So my 12-year-old son and I were left behind while 3 generations of the family went to the beach together. That Saturday morning, after they'd all driven away in Dad's SUV, I did something I'd never done before in my life. I went into my father's study. I'd watched him open that safe behind his desk 100 times over the years. His birthday backwards, 0-3-1-9-4-5. He'd never bothered to change it, probably never imagined one of his daughters would need to look inside. The will was right there, in a manila folder labeled Estate Planning, updated January 2024. My hands were shaking as I read through it, but the numbers were clear. Kelsey, 75% of all assets, including the house, investment accounts, and life insurance policies. Chantel, 25%, consisting primarily of the lake house property, Dad's old car, and Mom's jewelry. The difference was staggering. Kelsey stood to inherit nearly $2.3 million. I would get maybe $300,000, and most of that was tied up in a property that needed massive repairs. But it wasn't just the money that gutted me. It was the footnote at the bottom of the document. In Dad's careful handwriting, Kelsey has greater financial responsibility with her daughter's future to consider. Chantel has established career stability and fewer dependents. Fewer dependents. They'd erase my son with 2 words. I took pictures of every page with my phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The confrontation I'd been avoiding finally came in March, but not the way I'd planned. I was working late in my classroom, grading midterm exams and updating my gradebook, when I got a text from Dylan. Mom, Grandma threw away my drawings. All of them. I called him immediately. He was crying, my son who'd been trying so hard to be strong, to be the independent boy in the attic. She said she needed the space in the laundry room for Emma's growth chart and some photos. She just put them all in the garbage, Mom. Even the one I made for Father's Day. I was in my car before he'd finished explaining. When I got home, I found Dylan in the attic, sitting on his bed with his math homework spread around him, trying to pretend he was okay. But I could see he'd been crying, and I could see the empty walls where his artwork used to be taped up. I went straight downstairs to the kitchen, where my family was gathered around the island, cooing over Emma while she sat in her high chair, smearing sweet potato all over her face. Patricia, I said, and my voice was so calm it surprised even me. I need to speak with you. Mom looked up, slightly annoyed at the interruption. Can it wait, honey? We're trying to get Emma to eat her vegetables. Where are Dylan's drawings? The room went quiet. Kelsey stopped making airplane noises with a spoon. Dad lowered his coffee cup. Oh, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. Those old things? I cleaned out the laundry room today. We needed space for Emma's milestone photos and her growth tracking chart. I'm sure Dylan can make new drawings. You threw away 2 years' worth of my son's artwork to make room for photos. Chantel, don't be dramatic. They're just drawings. Just drawings. My son's creativity, his effort, his attempts to connect with grandparents who saw him as a nuisance, dismissed as just drawings. And that's when I realized I was done being reasonable. Just drawings. I repeated, and now my voice wasn't calm anymore. Is that what Dylan is to you? Just something taking up space while you make room for what really matters. Now wait just a minute. Dad started, but I cut him off. No, you wait. For 6 months, I've watched you push my son aside like he doesn't exist. You moved him to the attic so Emma could have his room. You ignore him at dinner. You don't ask about school, his friends, his life. And now you're throwing away the things he creates because you need space for more photos of your real granddaughter. Kelsey stood up, Emma still in her arms. Chantel, you're being unfair. We love Dylan. Do you? I looked at each of them. Because I've been paying attention for months, and love isn't what I've seen. What I've seen is a family that decided Dylan and I were temporary inconveniences while Emma became the center of your universe. You're upset, Mom said, using that condescending tone she perfected when I was 16. You don't mean this. I mean every word. And I also mean this. Dylan and I will be out by the end of the week. The silence was deafening. Emma gurgled and banged her spoon against her tray, the only one in the room who didn't understand that everything was about to change. Chantel, be reasonable, Dad said finally. Where will you go? You can't afford. You don't know what I can afford, Dad. You've been so focused on Emma's future that you never bothered to ask about mine. I turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. I know about the will. The look on their faces told me everything I needed to know. Shock, guilt, and just a hint of fear that they'd been caught. Enjoy your inheritance, Kelsey. I hope it's worth what you paid for it. That night, while my family sat downstairs in uncomfortable silence, Dylan and I packed everything we owned into my Honda Civic and a small U-Haul trailer. It didn't take long. We'd been living out of suitcases for 6 months anyway. I'd found us a small duplex in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from my school. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that could barely fit a couch. But it was ours. And Dylan's bedroom had 2 windows, carpet, and a heating vent. It's perfect, Mom, he said, standing in his new room with his backpack slung over his shoulder. And look, I can put my new drawings right on the wall. New drawings. Because his old ones were in a garbage truck somewhere, and we were starting over. The first few months were tight. Really tight. But I kept tutoring, kept saving, and slowly built up our security fund. Dylan joined the art club at his new middle school and made friends with kids whose parents invited him over, without checking his social media following first. And then something unexpected happened. Mr. Alvarez, the department head at my school, announced his retirement. He recommended me for his position, said I had the organizational skills and leadership experience they needed. The promotion came with a $15,000 raise and better benefits. Suddenly, the duplex didn't feel so small, and Dylan's art supplies didn't have to come from the dollar store. A year later, we bought our first house. Not a mansion like my parents', but a cozy 3-bedroom colonial with a finished basement that Dylan immediately claimed as his art studio. We painted the walls whatever colors we wanted, hung family photos without asking permission, and ate dinner whenever we felt like it. My parents called a few times in those first months, awkward conversations where they asked if we were doing okay and wondered when we might visit. I was polite but distant. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. Kelsey reached out too, eventually. A long text message explaining that she'd never meant for things to go the way they did, that she hoped we could work things out. But she never offered to give up the guest suite. She never suggested that maybe Dylan deserved more than the attic. And she never acknowledged that her comfort had come at my son's expense. Some betrayals can't be fixed with apologies. The last I heard, Emma's nursery had taken over the entire 2nd floor of my parents' house. She has a playroom, a bedroom, and what Mom calls a quiet space for when she needs to decompress. The attic has been converted into storage. Dylan's 13 now, and he's never asked to visit his grandparents. Sometimes I catch him looking at the family photos we brought with us. Pictures from birthdays and holidays when he was smaller, when they used to see him as their grandson instead of competition for their attention. Do you miss them? I asked him once. He was quiet for a long time, considering his answer with a thoughtfulness that makes me proud every day. I miss who I thought they were, he said finally. But I like who we are now. Who we are now. A family of two who chose each other every day, who prioritize love over money, who measure worth by character instead of inheritance potential. I'm not going to lie, there are moments when I wonder what that $2.3 million could have bought us. College tuition without student loans, vacations we've never taken, a house with a 3-car garage, and a swimming pool. But then I look at Dylan, confident and creative and surrounded by people who value him for exactly who he is, and I realize we inherited something much more valuable. We inherited our self-respect, and that's worth more than all the money in their safe, all the square footage in their house, and all the conditional love they had to offer. Because here's what I learned. Family isn't about sharing DNA or inheritance plans. It's about showing up, paying attention, and choosing each other even when it's hard. My parents and Kelsey made their choice. They chose Emma and money, and the easy path of loving the person who required the least from them. Dylan and I, we chose each other. And we choose each other every single day. That's not just inheritance. That's legacy. And unlike money, it's something no one can take away from us, no matter how they rewrite their wills.